Morning. Coming from Shmini Atzeres, we have to be lit the entire year. Simchas Torah is the climax of the entire year. So if that doesn't charge us up and inspire us, there is nothing that can. It's the ultimate unity. It's the conception of the Jewish soul. The soul is conceived in virtue of da'as, the ability to connect, the ability to see the bigger picture. Remember we were speaking how there's a written Torah that doesn't change, and then there's an oral tradition that interprets the depth in that written Torah, and that's like analogous to basking in light. So there's a source of light and shining. And then there is the ability to draw that dynamic into a complete unity through the power of da'as, knowledge, connecting. So you're connecting the two aspects of the Torah with the author himself and recognizing that it is all about Hashem. Now, when that experience is in all that you are, it's called rain. Rain takes the wisdom, the water, from a high place and brings it lower, and it represents the process of hiskashmos, to become more gashmias. Rain means to become more material, because we eat our Wheaties every morning from it. And how that relates to our function now. Historically, we've had a certain role that's changed now. Historically, we have been devoted to a confrontation and with the world, and when that veil of the world is lifted, the world is not, the Olam is not a helam of concealment anymore, but is a launch pad. Good morning. So we were speaking about the importance of how that plays out in our Torah, in the narrative of the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka, the most important marriage in the history of our people. Everything depended on that, and Abraham therefore gave all of his fortune to be an incentive towards that union, and he sends his servant to find the match. And this is significant because Rivka, specifically Rivka, the only wife that Yitzchak had, is the one who was destined to be his Besherter, his intended, in the terms of the Hadil, heart of darkness. So we are going to be saying in the future time that our real father was Yitzchak. Of the three, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we are going to say Yitzchak, the second in the generations, was Yitzchak. And he represents gvura, severity, discipline, as opposed to Avram, his father, who represents giving, benevolence, bringing things down into the world, having guests and talking about meaningful things. Yitzchak was much more insular and devout, in the sense that he's identified with prayer, and therefore he's connected with Levi, his grandson Levi, who ended up becoming the class of musicians and singers and those who pray. So the Levi, especially Aaron and Cain, well, actually here it's in contrast with the Kahanic lineage that also comes from Levi. The Cains and the Levis come from the same father, Levi. Right, so Levi had his grandson or great-grandson was Aaron, the father of all the priests, who represent a continuation of Avram's service of benevolence and giving. So the priest assumes that role in a bigger way, as we've learned about a few months ago. probably last year. So the Levi, in contrast, is devoted to prayer. And why that is the force that is our father, Yitzchak is Avinu, our father, why that is the emphasis. So we started yesterday, this one of the final, you would probably call it an article, if I'm reaching a wide enough audience, but this is a mimer. Anyways, this is the final chapter of this. We did about half of it. I'm going to review a little bit, and then we'll continue and finish it, hopefully, in the next 20 minutes. So the story of this shidduch, of this match of Yitzhak and Rivka, comes specifically through a servant. So there's a soul that's associated with the side of servitude. The soul expresses that in its dynamic and relationship with Hashem, or particular types of souls. And V'tzarik l'havin lama nemar kol ze gabe Rivka. So the Alter Rebbe asked, the first thing the Alter Rebbe asked, why is this particular to Rivka of all of our mothers? The importance of this shidduch, this match had to be with her. Uma inin Rivka lazeh. And what does it have to do with the process here we're talking about? How does Rivka get recognized? Because she pours water from her bucket, not just for Eliezer, the agent here, to make the shidduch, who finds her, the one who discovers Rivka, but for his camels. So she is representing already a type of giver, or at least being a conduit for Shefa, the divine energy coming into the world. That is supposed to be given over. She pours water for the slave, for Eliezer, to show us that there is a connection between the Rivkas of the world, who will learn about what that means, and those souls who are described here like a servant. There's a shefa, usually water represents wisdom being transferred. There's a divinity that's being transferred here. But why is Rivka the one to play this role of being this giver of your pouring water? So there's a relationship between Rivka and her intended, who is Yitzchak. They both represent really the same thing, but at different dimensions. And their marriage has to come together, and we will recognize that in the future redemption, that Yitzchak is the power that allowed us to be victorious over all of our confrontations, the Avedis HaBirurim, the difficulty of sifting through the darkness of the world and finding light. So Yitzchak is the force that helped us along. Ki Avram lo yadanu. There's no das to Avram here in terms of recognizing what force drove us towards the ultimate attainment during the time of exile leading up before the final 1,000 years of sabbatical. Ve'im ki Avram hu chesed, v'sheish chesed da'atik yemin. So the ancient one, it has two aspects. He has chesed and he has gvura. And there's a relationship between the two, and there is an ascension of the left side, the gvura, the severity that is intended to. So Yitzchak, we learned, is the promise of laughter. It's recognizing that things aren't always so funny when they're happening, but the canoe trip is celebrated most afterwards, rather than when you're going through it. Sometimes. I mean the ones with the mosquitoes. And in the future, the weaker side the left side, the severity, the discipline, the might, the receiver, thank you, of which Yitzchak represents, which is Gvura, they will be shown to be higher. Like gold exceeds silver. And you'll see the same thing happening to the preeminence of Levi, the guy who washes your hands, I guess like Rivka here. It seems like Rivka and Yitzchak are doing the same function, but just in a different level. And the Levi is going to undergo an ascension in recognizing the importance of what he or she contributed. But Tam calls that the reason for all this is Kihine Yitzchak Ulashin Tzchaik. We learned this yesterday at length. Yitzchak is laughter, but it's the promise of laughter, and it is the idea that innovation itself is what causes laughter. When you see something miraculous, something unusual. David HaMelech, his beauty is known to primarily be associated with these contrasts between brilliant, bright blue eyes and a ruddy complexion. And how the way that this warrior poet made it happen was miraculously expressive of divinity in the world. So the promise of laughter is really the promise of tainug, pleasure that arises from something that is innovative. We spoke about the parrot talking. Wow. Or two unusual animals. Could a scorpion beat a polar bear? So a king would want to see that play out because they didn't have TikTok. So Hashem's going to make a Kanigi, a spectacle of combat, where there's two sides warring. We've spoken about this at length in the context of the Leviathan and the Sharabar, the Leviathan and the Behemoth, facing it off in the round, the square ring. So that is representing the Avedis Habirurim, the conflict of interacting with the world and coming out shining. And that is most expressed when you actually transform that darkness itself and the bitterness into sweetness, or at least something savory, as we learn in Tanya. So the evil of the world is intended to be transformed into good and ascend into holiness. And that's the laughter that Hashem promises. And it's associated with the divine name Elohim, which represents concealment. When the concealment itself makes sense, you could see Hashem guiding you every step of the way. When that veil is lifted, there is laughter, there is tainug, pleasure. That's why Sarah says at the birth of Yitzchak that Hashem has made laughter for me. In the past tense, but Kol Hashemeya Yitzchak li, all those who hear will laugh with me in the future. So the birurim, the rectifications will actually succeed, and the benefit from that will be realized if you just, what did the dwarfs sing? Hi ho, off to work we go. If it's all about work and there's no benefit from it, what was the point of the work in the first place? There's the promises of a sabbatical, and an ascension of the lowest becomes the highest. The Eved here somehow becomes on top, comes out on top. I think that's what we're going to say about the Eved. Okay. It's called Avdei Avos. we understand how this relates to us, because if we're not like the Avos, at least be like the servants of the Avos in seeking the union of these two forces, Yitzchak and Rivka, and what they're intended to do, which we're still defining. So you might have had a life that was contentious, difficult, and you don't necessarily see the benefit and reward for all of that. The Gilui Hatainu, the Alter Rebbe writes, is that the pleasure embedded within that is only appreciated, lasilava, in the future to come, kesheyishlimu kol habirurim, when all the rectifications have been accomplished and the world has been faced and conquered and defeated or made friends with. V'zeu lashin asid, and that is a promise of future attainment. V'hine inyan birur nitzutzes derapak anal nikra ha'alas man. When you do face the darkness and come out on top, that's called the feminine waters. V'kol ha'ala hu al yedei b'chinas gvura is associated with gvura, might, severity, discipline. The er chazer, of the shining back. The creature, the consciousness is in the world, and what are you going to do with it? If you're shining back to Hashem, that's gvura, acting like fire and ascending. The kamei inyan bala tshuva, like a penitent or a person who returns to Hashem, they do it with greater strength. B'chayala yasir shehu al yidei tzakas alev, because the heart can cry out and get turbocharged. B'chol lev v'nefesh uma'id, with all one's heart, soul, and might. V'ke'ein Rebbe Eliezer ben Dordaya, and like our hero, Eliezer, who the hedonist transformed, instantly attaining the greatest heights, but he suffered death as a result of the crime that it led to. And this person didn't require a life of devotion to attain eternal reward, or whatever that means to you. But they did it in a moment. V'hi bechinas er chazer, and that's the shining back that we can do. Ad she'aylel bechinas gvura de'atik makar kol ha'gvuris. And when you do that in the perfect way, you're totally reflecting this divine source, where that came from, which is the gvura that exists in Atik Yemen. Ancient of Days has this primordial aspect of might, of gvura, and your ability to assume that role is rooted there. When you act that way, that is how that divine energy comes into the world. Vehi hamislabeshes ben meichem stima, shehi l'mayla v'chinas meichem stima. Ki b'chinas atik yemim b'chinas tachtaina shebematzel. And this is really representative of the actual creator himself, as opposed to a something that could be attributed to the creation. Rak shemislabeshes v'yiredes meichem stima, kedei liyesherish hanet salim. And it becomes a type of source for all created existence. V'hine Abraham hu b'chinas Aver ma. Abraham can be rearranged, the letters of the word Abraham, to mean Aver ma, the limb that asks what. Shehu b'chinas hamshakas gilu alakus, and that is an expression of bittul, becoming a vessel to contain divine revelation or divine awareness. Shalamayla lamata, that is divinely ordained or overseen, imposed by the creator upon its creations. Like the little guy in the computer game is saved at the last minute. So that last minute means that there's an author, there's someone in charge. That's called Or Yashar. light shining straight from the source. We reflect back that light. And in the world, that's represented by the totally righteous individuals. They represent this divine force of expressing the source. So tzaddikim do that. Tzaddik shehu mashpia, and that's someone who gives, who influences, who affects, who gives benefit to others. Umamshich l'mayla l'mata, taking divine intent into the world. In other places, we've discussed the connection between tzaddikim and miracles. It's like a miracle to have a righteous person in this world, isn't it? But both miracles and the righteous are intended to replace the gvura, sweeten the gvura with assistance from on high. So the lowly soul is rooted in the ultimate origin. When it attains awareness of that, the lowly soul ascends and transforms. Vehu b'chinas chesed. So that's how divine kindness comes into the world through righteous people, not from like some random animal in the jungle or something, but people are the source for divine revelation. Ve'achshav b'zman ha'galaseinu shedayin loy nispara kol b'chinas klipas nega. So now, in the times when the Alter Rebbe was speaking, there was further need for facing darkness, temptation from the physical material world. Iker havedahu, that was the main mission. Hu davka b'mshachas alakus. The impact of that is to draw divinity into the world. So you face the world and you conquered. So divine energy comes into the world. You don't necessarily see it, but it's there, working away miracles. That's why there's primacy in the importance of representing God in the world and doing good things in the world. More emphasis in the times of exile is devoted towards that, because the world is vacuous of that. So we need tzaddikim to blaze a trail of shining light in a dark time. That's one time of history. The God created the world to be settled. So these tzaddikim, they give form to such chaos. And the reason why there's so much merit associated with facing confronting your problems is because there's a risk of when you confront them, you're going to get sullied. That risk is what makes it so precious. Hamaimer dereishe de Esav be'at the Yitzchak. The head of Esav was buried at the heel of Yitzchak. So the mind of what he represents, Esav's like Rome, is something that is at the feet of Yitzchak. Therefore the sages teach, choose life, zu umnis, that's your craft. Ubal karcha atachai, and you live because you're sent on a mission. Lahamshika er lamatadavka, to bring divinity into the world. That's why for all of thousands of years the main idea was what a kohen, the priest, represents, because you need to light up the world, so you have a priest. But the payment of facing the darkness is realized in the final era. So this narrative comes to a climax. And the Levi is secondary to a Canaan. We both stem from the same father, Levi, the son of Yaakov, but there became a distinction of someone who is going to represent the main purpose of the world, for thousands of years, which to light it up with divinity. And the Levi, who represents taking that world and shining it back, was secondary to that Kohen. As it said, they're given over to Aaron. Because the main thing for thousands of years was bringing divinity into the physical world. We even say that we say it's a Dirabat God has to make a dwelling place in the physical realm. And that's accomplished through thousands of years of effort. But what's going to be brought out is almost the opposite. Watch. Because it's only for a period of time that shuv is the main thing. Shuv meaning settling, to draw divinity into the world. Avalasid lavim, in the future to come. She Yivayruru kol habirurim, after all of the rectifications have been done to the conflict inherent to the world, these dacha kol ha'olam, and all the world will be purified. Ubala hamavas lanetzach, and death is swallowed up forever. So there's this decay about the world, that's this death. Once the world is no longer a source of decay, you could see that it actually reflects a higher level of divinity, as we've been learning about for weeks here. Death is swallowed up forever. Ve'ein satan, there's no more Satan. Ve'ein pagan, there's no harm. Then, on the contrary, you hagvuras yeser nailim. Then there is a flip, and gvura ascends higher than those who have had the laborious task of simply shining and representing God, bringing divinity down into the world. There's going to be a shift to recognize those who were given, those who were facing the shine and saw it elsewhere, not when they looked in the mirror, but in someone else. The mirror is going to turn around. Because the main laughter and pleasure, ha'elyon, of divine, limitless fashion, that is specifically the result of having confronted all the 288 sparks that exist in the world, by transforming the tendency that we had when we were born, and we were just like instinctual creatures. That effort is called feminine waters, the ascension of the feminine waters. V'hu hadavar chiddush, and that's the innovative, the miraculous. You take darkness and show that there is light hidden in that. That's why it says the Levim will become the Kohanim, because the shine will be back. It will be reflective. It will be the ascension of the preeminence of the creation, as opposed to the need to rely on the Creator, which there's greater depth in that, because I just saw a problem in understanding it. But by the end, I'm sure it will be figured out. Problem is, my minyan starts now. I'm trying to do this 6:30 to 7. That's really the time schedule. I haven't quite finished. We're going to bring it back to how this is reflective of Avdei Avos. It's really a sort of the second stage. We have these great fathers that preceded us, and we've come so far away in a sense, but so much more empowered than ever in history. Welcome, thank you. So the Eved also shines. Have a good day.